So I continue to believe, despite all the cynicism out there, I don't believe in the 4-year cycles. I don't think we're going 1 to 2 years of bear market. I don't think we're going to 10K. I think QT is over. Rate cuts have started. QE is beginning. Stimulus checks, housing crisis, yield curve control. We have seen nothing yet. The combination of AI and the level of indebtedness has reached a turning point, in my opinion. And I'm talking by the summer of 2026, I expect COVID levels of stimulus.
Artificial intelligence was supposed to be the great unlock of the 21st century, a technology that would make economies more productive, companies more efficient, and human labor more valuable. But as the dust settles and the real numbers come in, a different picture is emerging, one that's far more dangerous than anyone expected. Because behind the promise of AI sits a brutal truth. The system that's supposed to benefit from this innovation is already collapsing under its own weight. And according to Strike CEO Jack Mallers, the explosive growth of artificial intelligence isn't saving the economy. It's accelerating a crisis that was already inevitable. Mallers argues that the real story isn't just about technology. It's about the extraordinary macro pressures building inside the U.S. economy, pressures so severe that policymakers are preparing for another tidal wave of money printing, stimulus checks, and emergency intervention. In fact, Jack says the next round of printing may exceed what we saw during COVID, when the Federal Reserve's balance sheet more than doubled from just over $4 trillion to more than $9 trillion. And the trigger, he says, is AI. Not the innovation, but the fallout. The job losses, the tax revenue collapse, and the explosion in government spending required to keep the economy afloat as white-collar workers are replaced faster than the system can adapt. This perspective is shocking because it flips the mainstream narrative upside down. Most people still believe AI will bring prosperity, new opportunities, and a stronger economy. But Mallers is showing us the side of AI almost no one wants to talk about: the immense cost. The power build-out that's draining U.S. electricity capacity, the trillion-dollar financing needs of major tech companies, the historic unemployment surge, and the bitter reality that the government cannot allow deflation, not with this level of debt, which means AI's efficiency gains will be met with massive, aggressive money printing to keep the system alive. From universal basic income to continuous stimulus, Jack says we are heading into a monetary environment unlike anything the world has ever seen. In today's video, we'll break down Jack Mallers' full analysis, why he says the US has reached a point of no return, and how this new AI-driven crisis makes Bitcoin not just a good idea, but a survival strategy. If you appreciate deep macro breakdowns like this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us until the end. What you're about to hear may be the most important warning you'll get all year. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
The thing that, to add context here, is not only does the U.S. government have to choose solvency over inflation, not only are we going to see, in my opinion, some form of yield curve control or excessive levels of printing money to lend to the U.S. government to sustain this system, to prevent bankruptcy, but we have AI, which is making it all worse. Deflation doesn't help an inflationary system, you see? So anyways, Anthropic's CEO warns that some AI giants are taking reckless hundreds of billions spending risks on data centers and chips, saying the industry is gambling on uncertain economic payoffs. You don't say. From the Financial Times, OpenAI needs to raise at least $207 billion with a B as in banana, $207 billion by 2030. So it can continue to lose money. What a insane headline, by the way. Here's bond issuance by big tech AI companies. So in 2025, we've already crossed over 100 billion. And if you look on the far right, you could see January through August, we were pacing to be a pretty average year. And only recently, in Q3 and Q4, did this absolutely explode. And this data is from Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and Oracle. That's it. This doesn't include a lot of other players. This chart, U.S. data center build-out status by year of construction or planning in gigawatts of capacity. You can see how much is stalled, how much is planned, how much is underway and built. What about this? You see the blue line? The blue line is when you become the world reserve currency, you divorce yourself from the gold standard, and you enter la la land and just start printing money. So at the bottom right there, you can see total AI demand is starting to reach U.S. capacity for power generation. And this is the fear that everyone in the West has, is that China is built for scale. And again, I have to put this disclaimer every time. I think the CCP is horrible. I'm not a fan of the CCP. I'm not a fan of China. I think the way that this story ends is this becomes the internet versus China. I think the internet will end up representing the West. It carries its ideals. Things like Bitcoin carry its principles. I think the modern version of the West is dead. We're starting to see it in America, where all of our greatest cities are dissolving into crime-ridden homeless shelters. But China's built to scale. There's no doubt about that. And we have a problem on our hands, guys. If you want the blue line to start going up, who's paying for that? Who is paying for that? And on top of all of this, we talked about it before. When we said that if the Fed were to tighten to fight inflation, see, the Fed sees the commodity prices rising. They want to tighten, protect the American people from inflation. Okay. That would reduce the amount of growth in borrowing from companies, which will then reduce the amount of employment, which would then reduce the amount of tax receipts, which would then widen the deficit. Okay. You see, AI is adding so much fuel to the fire because it is unemploying one of the United States' biggest revenue generators, which are white-collar workers paying taxes. Check this out. College graduates now have the same job finding rate as high school graduates, according to a report. I'm sorry. I'm going to read that one more time. You have the same chance of finding a job whether you have a college degree or not. The thing that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to get, education and housing and transport and food, that thing doesn't matter anymore. The people getting computer science degrees, learning to be an accountant, learning to be a lawyer, they're not getting jobs. You have a better chance working with your bare hands in building these AI data centers for Mark Zuckerberg than you are to work for him as an engineer. Another one, U.S. layoffs are on track to exceed 2008's great financial crisis. So not only is the U.S. forced to have a big print, not only are we so indebted that no matter what, yields go up. Yields go up, we literally can't afford it anymore. We need the lender of last resort. And by the way, we're just ending a tightening cycle and just starting an easing cycle. Not only is all that true, but one of the greatest tech innovations of our time, artificial intelligence, digital intelligence, is sending us into a violent crisis because unemployment is going to reach record highs and U.S. tax receipts are going to crash. Look at this chart. This is insane. Guys, 2025, when you've got our president like, stock market's at all-time highs, we're the best at everything, everything's great. This is the same level of layoffs as the '08 financial crisis. And it only looks small compared to when every government in the world held a gun to everyone's head and said you're not allowed to go to work.
As tech giants burn hundreds of billions on data centers and chips, borrowing explodes, power grids approach their limits, and white-collar unemployment begins to spike. The very workers that historically generated the lion's share of tax receipts, accountants, analysts, software developers, legal assistants, are being replaced. The economy grows more efficient, but the government becomes starved for revenue. That is why Mallers believes policymakers will print, stimulate, and subsidize on a scale that rivals wartime economics. Up next, we'll look at why Mallers believes this environment makes Bitcoin not just a hedge, but the winning asset in both potential futures.
But the difference in 2025 is everything is supposedly going according to plan. There is no financial crisis. There is no crazy war. There is no crazy flu virus. This is what it looks like when things are working. Crazy. Over 1 million people laid off. What's going wrong? AI. It's a blessing because AI has a chance to deliver the growth that the government needs. We talk about debt to GDP. So much debt, they need more growth. But it's a curse because an inflationary system can't take deflation. People say, oh, AI is going to take all of our jobs. That's not. All these people that have all these jobs, they have mortgages, they have car loans, they have credit card debt. Also, by the way, they pay taxes to fund the US government. Your AI isn't paying the US government. So I continue to believe, despite all the cynicism out there, I don't believe in the 4-year cycles. I don't think we're going 1 to 2 years of bear market. I don't think we're going to 10K. I think QT is over. Rate cuts have started. QE is beginning. Stimulus checks, housing crisis, yield curve control. We have seen nothing yet. The combination of AI and the level of indebtedness has reached a turning point, in my opinion. And I'm talking by the summer of 2026, I expect COVID levels of stimulus. I can't wrestle with the math any other way. Okay, first question. Is universal basic income inevitably post the big print? Okay, so is the government going to have to hand out money to the everyday person that's being unemployed by AI? And I think the answer is yeah, it is inevitable. I think you're kind of starting to see it with Trump's idea of stimulus checks because of quote unquote tariffs. Obviously we are running this massive deficit when Trump says we're rich, we're rich, we're rich. We're not rich. We're running a $2 trillion deficit. The deficit keeps growing every single year. Yields won't come down. No one wants to lend to us. We're not rich. So where's the money coming from? Yeah, it's some soft form of universal basic income. The question is, how are these people going to pay their bills, pay their outstanding debts so that the system doesn't collapse if robots are doing their jobs? And it's funny, again, the United States, but the whole world has found themselves in this precarious predicament because it's they need the AI growth and they need the AI. AI is half the US economy. We've already kind of went over that together on last episode. It's half of the GDP growth. They need the growth, but they can't take the deflation. They can't take the fact that the growth is going to result in so much efficiency and innovation that everyone's going to be unemployed. Or not everyone, but you guys know what I mean. So, my thesis remains the same. I think Bitcoin and AI will bring about an art renaissance where humans can be, if we have money that respects our time and energy and an ability to save and prioritize our future, then we won't be, a hamster on a treadmill continually running a rat race just trying to meet, next month's expenses. And if we have AI to do the accounting and the legal and whatever, a lot of the mundane work that, I've never met a human that enjoys it, then, we can do art and explore the creative pursuit in which we are only uniquely capable. So that continues to be my thesis, and I do think UBI is going to be a part of it at some point. What do I think are the biggest risks to Bitcoin not succeeding? My answer to this question has it's been twofold. One is, I think the best way to slow Bitcoin down is in regards to growth is actually if the US government came out and said, we're done with war forever. We're never printing another dollar. By the way, you can use your money for whatever you want. You want to experiment with drugs, whatever you want. No controls on your money, no limits, no KYC, no nothing. We're never going to print another dollar. We're going back on the gold standard. I think Bitcoin is some combination of technology plus fiat liquidity. That's what it is. And there's some parts where technology drives its growth. When Bitcoin's disintermediating payments or remittances, there's settlement efficiencies Bitcoin brings. It aids to Bitcoin's growth. And the other thing that aids to Bitcoin's growth is fiat liquidity. In large part, Bitcoin is priced on expected values of fiat supply. Bitcoin's priced on the expected value of fiat supply tomorrow. That's it. And so if someone wanted to slow down Bitcoin's growth, they would stop creating fiat supply. But therein lies the problem, right? Like then the whole system falls apart, everything goes insolvent, we have to start over, and as we start over, we very likely elect Bitcoin to move on anyways. So, Bitcoin wins in the version of austerity or the version of, protecting solvency with inflation. It wins either way. But the question is, which path are they going to pick? Which one would take longer? Austerity would obviously take longer. If they don't print trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars and they keep fixed supply and allow us to go through a Great Depression, that would certainly slow Bitcoin's inevitable success down. So that, the other thing is, the other answer I like giving on this one is all of us, guys. Like in many ways, Bitcoin's greatest asset and greatest threat is all of us. Bitcoin without humans backing it, Bitcoin without people running nodes, Bitcoin without a community relentlessly protecting its principles and its ethics and its morals, it's just unused software. Like Bitcoin is not like a meteor. It's not granite. It's text. It's text on paper. That's all it is. You can create a key pair by rolling dice. It's math. It's text. It's all of us that actually make or break Bitcoin. You see? And so, it's really like, to me, what I've always kind of conceptualized for myself is Bitcoin will win or lose depending on how bad humans want a fair, honest monetary system.
Jack Mallers ends his analysis with a warning that cuts deeper than most investors realize. He argues that the U.S. government and every major economy in the world is now locked into a cycle where printing is not optional. It is mandatory. The debt is too large, growth is too weak, and now AI is stripping away the tax base needed to sustain the system. Combine this with declining global demand for U.S. debt and the transition away from four-year market cycles, and you get a macro setup where the only viable survival tool for the government is liquidity injection on a scale that dwarfs COVID. This isn't fear-mongering, it's math. And it explains why rate cuts, QE, stimulus, and relief packages are already creeping back into the conversation faster than anyone expected. In this environment, many investors are distracted by short-term narratives, ETF flows, election noise, regulation updates, and temporary price volatility. But Mallers is urging people to zoom out. What matters is not next week's CPI print or the next FOMC meeting. It's the structural reality of a global economy entering an era of perpetual easing. Once governments start printing to offset AI-driven unemployment and collapsing revenues, there is no going back. And the more they print, the more they dilute the very currency your salary, savings, and retirement depend on. That is why Jack calls Bitcoin a necessity, not a luxury. Because Bitcoin thrives in both possible futures. If governments choose austerity and refuse to print, the system collapses into a deflationary depression, and people naturally flee to hard assets outside government control. If governments choose printing and solvency over stability, fiat supply explodes and Bitcoin becomes the escape valve for anyone trying to preserve their purchasing power. Either path leads to greater adoption. Either path leads to global demand for a finite digital monetary network that no government can debase. And as AI reshapes the economic landscape, Bitcoin becomes the anchor, the only asset that isn't tied to the political incentives of the moment. So as investors celebrate recent price action, ETF approvals, or trending narratives in crypto, Mallers wants people to understand the bigger picture. We are witnessing a once-in-a-generation shift in global monetary policy, forced by technological disruption and decades of fiscal mismanagement. Bitcoin isn't just on the right side of history. It may be the only thing that survives it. And drop a comment below on whether you think AI accelerates or delays the next wave of stimulus. If you found this breakdown valuable, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.